Women who gave the creep a chance. How did it go? We had a terrible date. I wanted to cancel beforehand, but felt guilty doing it. He texted a lot after. I told him straight that I did not feel the same way about him, and wait for it, he took it well. He thanked me for being straight with him and for giving him a chance. I hope he found someone. The creepy behavior was mostly before the date. I was working a temporary bartending position while the usual bartender, a friend, was on unpaid maternity leave. It was a small, hole in the wall type neighborhood bar. In addition to off-putting / creepy jokes and comments, there was also an incident where he offered to wait to walk me to my car and I declined. I still found him hiding in the shadows, waiting for me as I walked out. He almost learned what a stun gun felt like that evening. He claimed he was just worried about me because he saw some sketchy people outside when he left. Do I know that's what it was for sure? No. I definitely questioned his motives, but I gave him the benefit of the doubt. I asked my friend what his deal was, and she said he fell into the creepy but harmless category. After talking with him for a few weeks, I was at the job. I took him as someone who had very poor social skills, but not a bad person. I think the creepy vibe came from the lack of his social skills, to be honest. He needed a lesson in not trying to act cool or tough when his comments or jokes with his comments or jokes because it contributed to the creep for sure. I accepted the date on my last shift at the bar, figuring that it went really badly. He didn't know where I usually work. I made sure to drive myself there and had people stand by. Sure, I need some help. Story number 2. After a few dates, he started to get way too serious. I told him calmly and honestly that I wasn't ready for a serious relationship and he deserved to be with someone who was. He completely flipped and came after me, name calling me. I stood up and started to leave the bar. He then said, "You should watch yourself in the future, especially when getting into your car." Yeah, I was extremely paranoid for months after. Would check the backseat of my car and under my vehicle. Never saw him again, so just an empty threat, but not a fun time. That was like 15 years ago, and yeah, he's still single. Story number 3. I bought him coffee one time and we chatted about our music tastes. 3 days later, I was sitting in my dorm and I got a text from him that was just a selfie. I sent one back and the conversation got really boring, so I sent him a snap of a black screen. He responded, "Are you in a dark place?" And I said, "Yeah?" His response was, "Well, you'll have to leave soon because you have class at 6. I never told him anything about my classes, so he just stalked me until he learned my entire schedule. It turns out he was a serial creep preying on freshman girls. Story number 4. At the end of a weird and terrible date, he asked me for a hug as I was turning to leave. I thought, whatever, let's just get this over with. As I was pulling away, he forcefully grabbed the back of my head and shoved his tongue in my mouth before I was able to break free. The next morning, I had a 3-page email in my inbox telling me all the things that are wrong with me and why he's not interested in a second date. Story number 5. I met him when I worked as a cashier in a small downtown shop. Wasn't my type and seemed a little off, but I was young and had zero real dating experience. Agreed to grab a coffee as a friend and made it clear that I didn't have any romantic interest. He became convinced he was Gatsby and I was his Daisy. The Great Gatsby film had just come out that year. Started talking to me and endlessly sending me letters and gifts to me at work describing how we were fated to be together. When I confronted him to stop, he started having his friends follow me at work or drop by to check in on me. Prowled outside on nights I had to close shop alone. I ended up quitting that job and things fizzled. 7 months later, I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. It was the same dude. He just got released from a short prison sentence and was letting me know that he thought of me every day and was going to find me so we could finally be together. I made up a story that I was traveling abroad for college and I would be gone indefinitely. Changed my number and luckily haven't heard from him again. Number 6. He stabbed my end of the table with a knife after getting upset with me, then started stalking me. I moved and invested in cameras for my house and a dash cam. 1 million emails, police reports, etc. Oh, and his twin brother and stalked girls for a few years prior. He ended up killing 2 police officers. Seems like creep runs in the family. Number 7. I'll give the rare success story. Not with me, but it's not as bad as the others. He was sort of creepy and weird and neckbeardy. We hung out and sort of flirted because I didn't want to be seen as shallow and I didn't know how to hold boundaries, but I wasn't really interested. I eventually just sort of stopped giving him attention and giving off signals. Apparently, he made a couple snide comments to people we both knew about how I don't date monomuggles, monogamous people, which is a douche thing to say. A few years later, I saw him at a con and he waved me down, and I was nervous, but he was like, "Hey, I wanted to apologize. I was a real jerk to you and your friends. I've done a lot of work on myself and realized that women not liking me isn't a them problem, it's a me problem." I forgave him and we hung out a couple times after that. Good guy, just had been going through a cringy phase, I guess. Number 8. This guy was handsome, but way too into me for knowing nothing about me. It wasn't like when we spoke, I was an open book or felt a strong connection that would lead to me want to share info with him. This was not a, I feel like I've known him forever kind of connection. I just thought this was normal dating, but had a gut feeling something was off. He'd talked to me like I'd been his girlfriend for months. We went on 3 dates, never even had sex. After the 3rd date, I had made my decision based on our short time getting to know each other and let him know I had no interest in continuing to date and that I didn't see us being compatible long term. He then locked me in my car, proceeded to ask me if I wanted to move to California with him, and started crying and begging me to work this out. I tried to be nice, but it got to a point I was scared and wasn't sure how this was going to go since he was virtually a stranger. So I hit his dashboard and said if he didn't let me out of his car immediately, I was calling the police. He then threatened to off himself if I didn't spend the night with him at his house. I had never been to this man's house. He finally let me out of the car an hour or two later, but stayed in the parking lot of my apartment almost the entire night and called me non-stop. About a month later, he texted me out of the blue with a really long paragraph apologizing profusely and saying if I ever changed my mind to call him. I just said thanks for the apology and wished him well. Hope he's doing okay, but I wanted no part in that. Number 9. Wow, I had something similar happen when I was 18-ish. I was modeling at the time and volunteered for a date auction for charity, and some guy like 10 years older than I sort of knew bought me. We went on our date a few weeks later, dinner and mini golf or something, and the date was kind of awkward, but fine. And afterwards I said, "Okay, that was nice. Time to take me home." Instead, he drove me to his house and insisted I join him for a nightcap. I refused, and he locked his doors and wouldn't let me out. This was in the days of pre-cell phones, so I couldn't even call 911. Eventually, after over an hour of him telling me how I owe him some more company because he paid me so much for me, I got nearly hysterical and told him that if he didn't take me home this instant, I would kick his window out and scream for someone to call the cops. He did take me home and was all surly about it, and I couldn't get out of the car fast enough. Like, you thought I didn't tell anyone. It was so messed up. I'm certain he was planning to roofie me or something. Number 10. The dude in the flat across from mine just started off as a really nice guy. Introduced himself, offered meals when he'd cooked too much, just a great guy all around. Within a few weeks, it was made clear that he was an alcoholic. I have a recovering brother, so I really sympathized with him. I went out of my way to sit with him, and eventually called an ambulance when he fitted from withdrawals. I'm in the UK, so calling an ambulance is free. This carried on for a little while, with me sitting with him 2 or 3 times a week, waiting for an ambulance. One night, after he started fitting, he kept grabbing my breasts. I was already on the phone to the ambulance service, but the woman heard me telling him to stop and sent the police as well. He was carted off, and just like usual, I grabbed his keys and told him to knock for them the next morning. Well, the next time I looked after him, the groping got worse, and then slowly so did my life. Suddenly, I had fires set outside my windows and a mutilated rat corpse left on my doorstep. The police were called after every incident, and I got to know one policeman who was put on my case really well. He suggested I put up cameras, so I did. There was footage of the neighbors standing outside in the yard at 3 a.m. just staring into my window, multiple nights in a row. Terrifying, but not illegal. Well, 2 weeks after that, my neighbor snapped. There were builders in the garden next to ours, and they apparently woke him up at 4 p.m. He ran out with a kitchen knife and stabbed 2 of the builders and the neighbor's dog. Everyone survived. He also slashed a whole bunch of tires on our street. When the police came to search the dude's flat, My policeman friend told me, off the books, that the neighbor had been faking being an alcoholic the entire time. He'd get in the ambulance, ride to the hospital, then check himself out and walk home. Also, they found half a dozen decomposing rats in his bathtub that had been mutilated. They later found a bloody hammer under his bed. You'd think him being arrested would be the end of it, but no. He put my name, picture, address, and telephone number on a prostitution website. I had men aggressively hounding me for sex multiple times an hour for 2 entire weeks before I cut all ties and fled the city. Last I heard, he was in jail for GBH, but that was a few years ago now. Yeah, never gonna make that mistake again. Number 11. Guy had serious untreated mental health problems, which resulted in him spending 4 years stalking me and making me resent giving that one chance. I made multiple calls to the police and paramedics because he would call me up, threatening suicide unless I'd let him in. He still finds me on social media and random gaming apps to say, "Hi, I miss you," but I now live more than 1,000 kilometers away. Number 12. On our first date, I ordered a beer. It came to the table super frothy. I was distracted for a moment, but when I looked at it again, there were very clear drip marks in the foam, like something had been dropped in it. I made up some excuse about not feeling well and got out of there. Oops, can't leave. Guess what? I drove, and my car was valeted very uncomfortably. Got the car from valet, and we both got in. He asked me to stop at a gas station so he could buy smokes on the way. Thank God, because I knew going to his house was not a good idea. As soon as he got out at the station, I peeled out and left him there. I never should have let him in my car, but I panicked. I didn't know what he was capable of. This was 15 plus years ago. I'm now happily married to the best thing that could have ever happened to me. Number 13. Back in high school, several of my female friends, and I, also female, had an off period before lunch. So we were all sitting around the table chatting. One of the female security guards came up to us and told me that there was a new exchange student from Amsterdam that thought I was cute, but he was too nervous to come over and introduce himself. I have zero interest in men, but I figured there wasn't any harm letting the guy come sit with us and helping him feel more comfortable at our school. So he comes over, sits down with us, and chats a bit. He seemed rather shy, and he had about a dozen piercings going up each arm he kept fiddling with, and a bunch of facial piercings too. Then class lets out, and people, including a bunch of my male friends, started showing up for lunch. First male friend sits down and introduces himself. New guy does not respond at all. Doesn't even look at the guy. Weird. I mean, maybe he's just shy. Second male friend comes and sits down. Same thing. Slightly unsettling now. We kept trying to include him over lunch, but he would only respond to the women. Wouldn't even acknowledge the other guys at the table. I never talked to him again after that lunch period, and 2 weeks later he got expelled for slamming a girl against a locker and choking her to the point she nearly passed out. Number 14. Did one video chat with him during which he asked if he could video call me later in the day. When I told him, no, I'll be busy, I started getting random text messages through the day that said, "Are you okay? Just let me know you're okay." The first I responded to, I said, "Hey, yeah, I'm fine. I just hung up with you 30 minutes ago, bud." He took that as a sign I wanted to talk more, so he attempted another video call. When I didn't respond, he started again with a text. Didn't bother responding to the rest. Up to 20 unread messages later before I was able to block him for a while, leaving him unread. Number 15. A few years ago, I went to a brewery to meet a guy on a date for the first time. The waiter began a conversation and asked me if I was expecting anyone else. I told him I was on a blind date and hadn't met the guy before. The waiter asked me if I wanted to set up a code word. Since they didn't serve milk stouts if I ordered one from him, he would know something is up and would call me back and have me sign the receipt instead. The waiter kept checking on me frequently. Eventually, I did order a milk stout. When it came time for the bill, I asked for it to be split. My date put his drinks on my bill. When the waiter came back, he told me he had the drinks removed. It was on the house. When my date asked me what that was all about, I told him the waiter had told me there was something wrong with my card, so I needed to go to the bar with him. I waited a while and then left for my car. The date was still there. He made a comment about how he was waiting for a goodbye hug. I told him no thank you and that my car was in the opposite direction. Moments later, he sent me horrendous text messages. And thank you, John. You may have saved my life that day. Number 16. Reading this, I realized I actually have something to contribute. I gave him a chance in high school. I was 15, he was 18, ended with him sticking his tongue down my throat several times, quite aggressively, joking about stabbing me as he lunged a knife at me and laughed about it while carving pumpkins, and threatened to shoot up the school with a list of names, my friend and I's being top of the list. He got suspended and no one ever saw him again. My friends and I found out that he's now in the military. Number 17. Used to work in a small store and this creepy dude would try and flirt with me. I guess it was flirting, like once or twice a week. He seemed like someone who didn't have any friends and never socialized, but one day he asked for my number, and it wasn't aggressive, but pretty straightforward, so I was like, sure, I guess. Thought he was weird, but he knew where I worked, so I couldn't really reject him because there was no way of knowing how he would react, so I had to keep talking to him from time to time to make sure he didn't flip on me since I worked at night. After like a few weeks of occasional short text combos, like maybe 2 or 3 few word texts, he asked how old I was, and he finally stopped talking to me because he was disgusted that I was 24 years old. He thought I was only 16, and he was 28. He was a Number 18. Went on a first date for some drinks with a guy, and the red flags were immediate. Didn't look anything like his profile, and got handsy almost as soon as we sat down. I wasn't into him at all, but we had shared interest in horror novels, so I decided to extend the date into a dinner. During dinner, he drank several old fashions while I nursed a single beer. He then told me he thought we were soulmates, and he thought we were going to fall in love. He also told me his ex-girlfriend was going to get an abortion the next day. At the end of the date, his portion of the bill was significantly more than my portion because of all of his drinks, but he asked me to pay half, in which I did. On top of that, he gave me crap for driving to the date even though it was only a mile from my house. I didn't want to walk in hot weather in my nice date dress, and I had twisted my ankle earlier that week. But even after giving me crap for driving, he asked me to give him a lift home, which I did. Once we were in front of his place, he refused to get out of my car unless I went inside with him for a nightcap. I said absolutely not. He begged me just to enjoy a drink on his front porch. I said no. I told him to get out of my car, and he finally did. The next day, he texted me telling me that it was the best date he'd ever had and couldn't wait to see me again. I told him no thank you and walked away with one lesson learned. I just need to say no from the beginning. Number 19. Okay, long story short, he locked me in his damp, musty basement. There was a cell phone with no service down there. When his buddy Mario was upstairs, it auto-connected to his hotspot. I was able to orchestrate an escape plan. I was down there for 3 weeks. I didn't call 911 because I don't trust the system. I was inside with this guy. The police would have been outside. See where I'm going with that? I went straight to the police station once I was out. Number 20. He had terrible hygiene. I was 16. He was old enough to buy beer for my friends. He had a friend who had some sort of made up gang who threatened to kill me if I ever left him. I stayed with him longer than I should have. He would follow me to school on the city bus and then walk around leering at women and pinching his nipples. I tried to break up with him, and he bought me Looney Tunes jewelry and insisted we were engaged. He finally had to go out of town for some family stuff and stayed gone for months, so I considered us broken up and moved on. When he came back, he acted crazy. He would go to my job and follow me around and try to corner me in the bathroom. His dad was the chief of police at a university and knew I was 16. My parents also knew about the relationship. I feel like some parents would have intervened to keep me from feeling trapped in that relationship.